This podcast contains spoilers, so listen at your own risk or call back after you've watched the movie.
You know who you call. Leave a message. Maybe they'll call you back. Then again, maybe they won't.
We're having ourselves quite a little game of phone tag here.
Ring, ring, ring. I usually get this guy's answering machine.
I'll call you right back.
If you're there, please pick up the phone. I really want to talk to you.
I check my fucking messages every day when I come home from work. My answering machine, zero. I got a blinking light.
All I have to do is pick up this phone right here, inform the cinema, and your plan's kaput.
No, I ain't got no phone. I had to pull, because people calling all the time, and who needs the aggravation, right? Interruptions.
Hey, man. Just on my lunch break, Friday, gorgeous sunny day. Strolling out to do a little shopping and send this voice note. Might be a bit windy, so I'm not sure if all this will come through perfectly. But last night I watched the early 90s Harrison Ford film, Presumed Innocent. I had stumbled upon the recent Jake Gyllenhaal TV adaptation of the book, which is an 8-part miniseries a while back. I think I must have seen it on Instagram or something. I was like, oh, I like Jake. I like legal dramas, courtroom dramas, especially stuff that's predominantly in the courtroom, which I was led to believe this was. Generally don't like TV, but I thought miniseries, not too many episodes, maybe it's all right. So I gave that a look and then recommended it to you. You've watched it. And now I think you're also planning to watch the movie. So we could have a good conversation here about the TV show and the movie and kind of how they compare to each other. And I suppose by extension, how the two mediums compare to each other to an extent. When I started the film, I sort of felt like I've killed this film. Because I've watched the whole thing across a week or whatever. 8 episodes, I guess that makes it 6 hours or something. I felt like, well, what's this movie going to do? This movie could be a brilliant movie, but I've just sort of killed it by watching every plot beat of the film in greater detail. And so I was a little bit checked out. And, from the beginning, I sort of felt like this is a solid movie. This isn't a great movie. And I'm not saying my opinion on that has changed, but when something's merely a solid movie and it's on the back foot because you've literally just less than a week ago watched almost like an extended plot synopsis of the movie, then yeah, it's not the most engaged I've ever been starting off a film. Now, pretty quickly, I started to notice changes. Changes is the right word because it's not that this film made the changes as the TV show made the changes. As I understand it, this film is fairly faithful to the book. I did, after I watched the film late last night, go on Wikipedia and read the plot synopsis of the book. But I was probably too tired to notice if there was any kind of finer details that differ between them. But certainly, almost every single plot point in this story, ranging from the major to the minor, differs from the film, the Harrison Ford film, and the Jake Gyllenhaal miniseries. And so for starters, those differences started to draw me in because I was like, oh, lo and behold, I am actually getting some fresh content here. This isn't just rewatching stuff that I'm already familiar with. But then beyond that, every single change, most changes, the vast majority of changes were changes for the better. And just to kind of, I'm going to be all over the place just talking about this movie. I can't help but separate it from my week-long experience of watching the miniseries and watching the movie. But watching watching the miniseries, I was constantly on this back and forth between like Jake Gyllenhaal's amazing, Peter Sarsgaard's amazing, courtroom drama stuff in general is amazing. Like I just love the legal, like throwing jabs at each other and the, you know, oh, how are they going to get out of that accusation? And then, oh, that response was really good. And I love all that. And it's there. I mean, it's created and written largely by David E. Kelly. He's like one of the, what, love him or hate him, he's one of the most sort of competent creators and writers of generic television. And yeah, so I was pretty drawn into the initial concepts, but then it would just constantly get bogged down. It's really windy here now, so I'm not sure how well you can hear this, but you know, like there's like a subplot of his wife having an affair with the bartender and things like that, where there's so much stuff in the TV show that's just like such a emblem of why I just struggle to contend with that medium. And that's obviously, you know, absent certainly from the movie. It might be in the book. The book has fallen, you know, takes much longer to read, so it has time to go down all those different avenues. And it kind of works. Maybe it's within that medium, but a TV show, especially miniseries, it usually just feels like we took a movie and we diluted it down. Now, sometimes it's something that's so dense, the material that we're dealing with, that you'd have to do it as a miniseries, or even an ongoing series, I suppose, and it justifies its length. But I think in almost all cases, miniseries are just like movies with millions and millions of deleted scenes chucked into them. So for starters, there's an insane amount of fluff in the TV series compared to the movie. I wouldn't say that there's an insane amount of fluff in that series compared to other series. It's kind of like par for the course, really. But watching the kind of like leaner version of it now was brilliant. Also, I'm going to jump straight to the very ending of this, like the twist reveal at the end. In the TV show, we initially find out that it's the wife that did it. Then the twist on that is that Jake Gyllenhaal helped, kind of. I mean, he got involved and he was the one who tied her up after the murder. And then the twist on that is that the wife didn't even do it. She wasn't involved, but actually the daughter did it. And when I saw that hat on a hat ending, which is terrible in the TV show, just completely ridiculous that the daughter was the one that did the murder and everything. It was just so like, you know, how can we come up with something that nobody will see coming? Well, just make it so that it has no consistency with character or logic or anything. One of my most hated tropes is a twist for the sake of it. But when I saw that, and I saw that the kind of sort of putting it to the wife that she did it and then the twist that she didn't, I thought to myself, oh, I guess that means in the original text, in the book, movie, that the wife does do it, and that they're giving us this scene so that the people who are familiar with the story kind of are like, yeah, I knew this was coming, and then give those people a twist. I was like, yeah, but I'm not one of those people. I don't need a twist on a twist. So when I went into this, right from the very beginning, I was like, I'm assuming the wife did it. But then when it turns out that there's no teenage daughter in the movie, I'm like, well, that basically confirms it. Now I find out that not only did the wife do it, but Harrison Ford / Jake Gyllenhaal, Rusty, was not involved. He didn't come in after the fact and try to cover it up and tie up the body and make it look like some sort of sex crime, which is vastly superior to the completely ridiculous scenario that we're given in the TV show Presumed Innocent, which for a lot of its runtime is fairly grounded in reality. So getting that kind of like, well, one person did a murder and then another person showed up and staged something else, and it's just it's stupid. Then as the well, not then, because I'm sort of jumping around in time, but there's a lot of stuff in this film where I'm like, that's such a better idea than the stuff that we get in the TV show. Like in the TV show, the old case of Carolyn's that Gyllenhaal becomes obsessed with is one involving a murder that looked like that kind of went down in the way that her murder looks to have gone down, and he's trying to find a person who there's basically no evidence or almost no reason to think that person can be involved in it, but he's trying to create reasonable doubt by just planting anything tenuously linked where that could make the jury just have the tiniest question on if someone else could have potentially done it. In this, and again, the only reason I can think for changing this is to just subvert people's existing knowledge of the plot. In this, we get he's investigating a plot as entwined in the sort of corrupt, incestuous nest that is the DA's office and the whole kind of justice system. So that involves everyone, his lawyer, the opposing lawyer, his former boss, the new boss, the judge. Like it's got everyone wrapped up in it, and you could say that they're wrapped up like with too much of a ribbon on top. They're like, but then at the end of the day, the victim is part of that office as well. So it works a hell of a lot better anyway. And those are two things that come to mind. But honestly, there's just a non-stop cavalcade of seeing better ideas than what I had just seen. So over the course of the film, I went from being like checked out because I was like, well, I know everything I'm going to get out of this, to just increasingly appreciative of what a nice, lean, a vastly superior story I'm getting. Now, that's the ways in which I would say it improves on the original. Going in the other direction, I think Gyllenhaal is a better actor than Harrison Ford, like without a doubt. I think that there is a movie star charisma that Harrison Ford has exhibited in like Indiana Jones, the Star Wars, this movie, you name it, like lots of other movies that Gyllenhaal doesn't really kind of, but if you look at Gyllenhaal in something like Prince of Persia or whatever, like attempts he's done at that like Hollywood hero old school thing, I don't think he is quite got that like really magical otherworldly quality that Harrison Ford has. But I think as a character actor, Harrison Ford doesn't have a huge amount to offer. When you see him in things like Apocalypse Now, he's just not really bringing anything to the table. Whereas Jake Gyllenhaal is incredibly versatile and can play all sorts of different characters. He's just much better actor. And he's no slouch in the Hollywood hero terms either. But I just think that there is a certain thing that Ford does that Gyllenhaal doesn't, as the real with the years of it. Might be missing some of what I'm saying now. Tommy Molfo. I'm not familiar with the actor who played him in the movie. I'm not sure what his name was. Looking him up on IMDb, I do see that I've seen him in one or two other things, but I have no memory of him. Peter Sarsgaard absolutely kills it in that part. And to be fair, it's a much better part on paper in the miniseries than it is in the movie. In the movie, there isn't that much for that actor to work with, and what is there, I think the actor does a commendable job with. But in the TV show, is a fully fleshed out character. In fact, it's one of the main characters of the show. And I think that losing that is like you've lost one of the best things about the show. Obviously, it's losing it, I say, because I saw them in that order, but it's more like adding it. It's got to be a different TV show, and it's clearly one of the sort of areas that they thought they had an opportunity to do something in the TV show that improves things. It's outrageous to end here. He'll stop this voice note. Just that part, that trying to sort of like kill some time before I go into the supermarket. What else? There's a lot that was coming to my mind as I was watching it. I'm not sure how much is going to kind of remain now when I'm trying to articulate it. Another thing is the flashback stuff. I mean, flashbacks I think are hard to do. I'm quite sensitive to flashbacks that don't really work for me. I think, for example, the trope that we've seen many, many a time, and the TV show Presumed Innocent almost does this, although I wouldn't say it's completely guilty of it. But one of my most hated tropes is the recurring flashback to the same moment where we just incrementally get tiny, tiny little bits more information every time and really aren't getting anything substantive until the last time we go back to that moment in flashback form. And then finally we see something of significance. But all the rest of the times it's kind of an ambiguous flashback. I absolutely hate that. Now, it's not in the miniseries or the movie, so I'm just saying that flashbacks can really not work for me. And in the TV show, they mostly didn't work for me. I mean, they work whenever they sort of give you a new insight into her character, but a lot of the time they just feel like, well, we're just trying to vary the show aesthetically and just make more different things going on. So we'll just put flashbacks in. In this one, the flashbacks are much more, they're longer form. I think there might be 2, maybe 3 flashbacks, and they give us a good chunk of story each time. So it works a lot better. And on the subject, but in both cases, the flashbacks are mainly there to explain Carolyn's character. In the TV show, you're given enough material to understand that she's a pretty horrible person, but it's not uber specific. In this one, they make her character very, very clear. There's no like enigmatic quality to her. She just is a very specific person with very specific goals. And I suppose you could argue that one works better for a movie and one works better for a TV show, depending on the amount of time you've got on your hands. But this film is a lot neater, and it's a lot more clear in this film to understand everybody's motivations, where people are coming from, which isn't, I'm not saying that's just objectively a good thing, but it's an observation certainly between the two of them. Just to get away from the comparisons for a bit, and just try to make some attempt to appreciate this film on its own terms. I thought it was a fun ride, certainly affected by my knowing roughly where we were headed. I thought it was a fun ride. I thought it was a good use of Harrison Ford. I think I forget the name of the actor who plays Lips, the police officer that works with him. He's someone I've seen many times as an older man with grey hair. I've never seen him as a younger man, and it was nice to see him pop up here in a less of a kind of elder statesman position and more just like, yeah, he's just your man on the street cop. That worked. That was good. I think just generally speaking, there's a lot of good actors in this, some of whom were very familiar to me, and others were ones that I didn't really recognize. But, you know, just everyone kind of did a solid job, and they build up this pretty cool tapestry of that department and that legal system. I like that it's not ridiculously corrupt, but that it is also very grey. And yeah, it's just like quite a nice world to set it within. Works quite well for a thriller like this. I think that the wife, I mean, we know her from Die Hard and various other things, but yes, she was good. I like that there's not that much fluff, like there's not that much with his kids and things like that. You know, you don't really need to get too bogged down in too many elements. Her ex-husband, Carolyn's ex-husband, we see briefly for one scene. We don't need too much there. And the TV show, they create a whole son character for him, which ends up being a major part of the show and really didn't work at all for me. So yeah, it's a fairly good, lean legal drama. I always with these things want to get to the courtroom, and it feels like we never get to the courtroom as much as I want to get there. But anyway, that's by the by. That's not what the film's trying to do. Alan J. Pakula, I think is the name of the director. I'm not sure what films of his I've seen, if any. Certainly know the name very well. I think he might have done All the President's May, which I've only seen years ago when I was much younger. Don't think I appreciated it at the time, and I'd have to kind of revisit it to see if I liked it now. But interestingly enough, the next film he does is The Pelican Brief, which I haven't seen, but is John Grisham. So he's kind of like in 2 consecutive movies done films by like a big blockbuster legal drama author. Speaking of which, the guy who wrote this, apparently he's set most of his works in this same county with the same legal system. So the guy that Raul Julia plays is the lead character in another book, which then got turned into a TV movie. So it's like a spin-off rather than a sequel. And then he wrote a book years later that is an actual direct sequel to Presumed Innocence. And they made a movie of that, and it stars Bill Pullman as Rusty. And I think Marcia Gay Harden as the wife. So there's a whole expanded universe of this movie. There's a movie, a miniseries, a sequel movie, like spin-off movie. There's a lot going on, and there's probably lots of books that also kind of, to some extent, fan off away from this. If you wanted to go down a rabbit hole, I'd probably be more inclined to go down an Alan J. Pakula rabbit hole, because I think this is sort of the twilight of his career. I believe he died in 1998, so he had a couple more movies left in him maybe after this, but we're not getting his most iconic work here, and it would be nice to sort of trace that back and fill in some of the blanks. I think The Parallax View might be one that he did that is quite highly rated. This film doesn't strike me as like the work of a master auteur filmmaker, so I doubt that this is considered amongst his best films, but it was good to get to. It probably would have been better if I'd watched this first, although I definitely wouldn't have watched the TV show had I done that, and I would have missed out on Sarsgaard's amazing performance. So, I got that at least. And my mum was in town, so, watched it with her, and it worked fairly well for that. But yeah, it's another little undersea 90s movie unearthed. And it'd be interesting to hear what you think, having sort of done that 1-2 punch of the miniseries and the TV show, how that affected your viewing experience. For me, at least initially, it completely bogged down the viewing experience. And then throughout, it kind of did as well. I guess I had that curiosity of, are they going to do the same thing? I think the fact that they took away 2 people from the ending scene, took away the Rusty's involvement, they took away the teenage daughter, they took her away from the entire proceedings, was good, because that's such a cluttered ending in the miniseries. But the logic, the whole way, the wife's confession and what she did and her intentions with planting the evidence so that Rusty would know that she was involved, but she didn't want him to go down for the murder and all this. That is completely absurd. So it's a terrible ending. The good ending to this is that Rusty gets off, and then we learn that he did do it. You don't need anything more crazy or wild than that. But yeah, if you're going to make the wife do it, it doesn't need to be this elaborate. So it is terrible, but it would be shocking to see that reveal in the cinema in the early 90s. Oh my God. So I get what they were going for, and I think it's iconic, even though it's poorly handled with her massive big monologue about how she planned it out. And then the very ending where Rusty's like, it's impossible, it's damn near impossible to try 2 people for the same crime. It's like, is it? That's not what movies have led me to believe, but who knows? Anyway, interesting flick. Probably one that I'll forget But as a sort of throw it on down the video store, popcorn piece of Friday entertainment, it is solid in that regard.
Yeah, isn't it double jeopardy Harrison Ford is talking about? Obviously, I get all my legal jargon from movies and TV like the next armchair lawyer, but isn't it that the same person can't be tried for the same crime twice? Isn't that what it is? Not that you can try two people for the same crime. I found the murder weapon and now we're charging this person instead because the blood is all over it. Surely that seems more logical, but it doesn't matter. Yeah, so I'm going to be all over the place with what I'm talking about as well. So I mightn't be coherent because I'll be talking about the TV show, talking about the movie, and probably going all over the place. So I don't know what's the best way to do this type of analysis of anything. But obviously, I saw the TV show first, watched it in 2 days. In fact, I watched 4 hours of it in the middle of the night and then another 4 that morning. That should give you an idea of how much I was into it, because I don't binge like I used to binge, really. I actually abandon a lot of shows nowadays. So when I come into watching the movie, should I say, like you, and actually much more than you, my enjoyment, my perception, my critical thinking, my analysis were all very much corrupted by having watched the TV show first. And while your initial early stages viewing of the movie, presumed innocence, was bogged down by having you watched the TV show, my whole experience was bogged down by watching the movie. I found it pretty dull, probably completely unfair, because I would have been more engaged if I hadn't watched the TV show, because I would have had no idea where this was going. But having watched the movie straight after the TV show, it was almost a painful slog to get to the ending. Now, in a way, I agree with you in some ways regarding the movie. I absolutely thought the end twist of the TV show was terrible. And I had the exact same thought as you, that there was a bunch of writers and they were thinking, hold on, what about the people who've seen the movie? What about people that remember the movie like it was yesterday? We need to give them something. We need to give them a twist. We need to give them some pizzazz. What if, instead of the wife, who very logically could have done it, what if the daughter did it? Huh? Yeah, it would just be such a twist. It would be such a twisty twist. Yeah, but the wife, it makes sense. She could have done it in a heat of passion. Yeah, but if the daughter just walks in at that moment and she did it, it'll just be another twist. And it'll make everyone go, what? Yeah, well, guess what? Not every time is a what? A good thing. Like, it's fucking bullshit in this case. And you mentioned the difference between a TV show and a movie, and how stripped down and to the point and all these other elements that aren't there in a movie. Absolutely agree with you. Absolutely agree with you that stupid romance with the barman subplot was grating. I remember watching it thinking, how much more of this are we going to get? I don't give a fuck about this. This manic pixie dream girl bartender, fucking characters like that. So I agree with you. I agree with you about that. Now, there's one vital, and I also agree with you of the ludicrous thing that Jake Gyllenhaal tied up the victim because he thought it was the wife after she died to cover up for the wife. That the whatever that woman's name was, that paralegal that died. I agree with that as well. However, crucially for me, and which had a massive impact, and which is the reason why I was finishing this movie in, finishing this TV show in a day, essentially, in 24 hours, was that it wasn't just a miniseries. It was a true crime miniseries. And I will eat up that shit. I am very simple formula, but TV has forgotten that formula. Give me something at the end of an episode to make me want to watch the next one. Just give me entertainment. And I was thoroughly entertained with it. Sure, when I look at it afterwards, it was all fucking bullshit. But while I was watching it, it was that simple formula of give me a phone call. I know you were there. Ooh, now I'm like, who are they talking about? Who are they talking about? It's that lost TV show formula, isn't it? It's don't give me an answer. Give me a question. Give me a question. And wrap that around an absolute fantastic Jake Gyllenhaal performance and love Peter Sarsgaard, and I am there. So all these bullshit red herrings that didn't make sense, all that, oh, the son was there. She has a son. Oh, he's a bit dodgy. Oh, but the son was there that night. Yes, give me that. Give me that journey. Give me that entertainment. Give me that pass the popcorn. Ooh, who do you think it could be? Like, I am thoroughly engaged with that stuff. True crime is addictive because of that stuff. Give me a prestigely well acted lead at the helm of that. Give me that, and I will eat that stuff up. Give me, oh, why is Jake Gyllenhaal's son there on a bicycle? What was it? What does that mean? Give me that. So I was on the edge of my seat in terms of the most pulpy, shallow way for this TV series, and I've really liked a lot of it. And Jake Gyllenhaal as well in the TV series. Jake Gyllenhaal is an actor, and Jake Gyllenhaal, the characters he normally is drawn towards, are very tenacious, like little terriers, chasing down the truth, badgering people, never letting off, being obsessive. And seeing him be obsessive in this way, and seeing him being wrong in how he goes about it, and seeing him being a fucking bully, was so good to see him in that way. And it just anchored everything and made everything compulsive viewing. Now, I agree with you in the movie sense, in that very straightforward, yeah, it is good that this is all linked to minor corruption. Well, not minor corruption, but quite serious corruption. Yeah, it makes sense. Okay, makes sense. We're following this procedure. We're following this journey. Yeah, that makes sense. I was bored. I was very, very bored. And you mentioned that the decisions in the movie are better. In a way, I agree. In the way of entertainment and enjoyment, I disagree. And also, a few ways in terms of drama and tension, there was none of that in the movie for me. Now, again, that's unfair in a way because I knew fundamentally where we're going to go. So had I watched the movie first, who knows? But just a few things. For instance, in the TV show, Jake Gyllenhaal's motivation is that he loves her and he's obsessed by her. And again, combining that with his Jake Gyllenhaal persona is very good to watch. In the movie, he says it's not love, definitely not love. It's just, wanted to fuck someone. It was just the fantasy of it. Don't really know why I did it. That's a less, obviously it's more likely, really. People have affairs all the time, but it's a less entertaining reason. There's not much more of an avenue to explore with that. But in terms of the drama we get out of it, Jake Gyllenhaal being obsessed by the character is much better. And even though Harrison Ford is accused, there's never any drama to that. There's never any weight. There's never any stress. There's never any stakes, it feels like. Now, again, that might very well be because I've watched the TV show, so I know exactly where it's going to go in a way. So maybe that's the reason. I don't know. I have to ask somebody who's watched it first. Have they felt? So we'll never know. But I know I've seen Harrison Ford act that way in something like The Fugitive. But in this, it doesn't really happen. And actually, if you take The Fugitive, Presumed Innocent, and Frantic, there's a whole chain of movies that come out in quick succession of Harrison Ford trying to claim his innocence in various things. The other thing that I absolutely agree with, not from a logical sense. Ow! My cat just fucking bit me. Did you bite me for? Excuse me. I actually thought this was in the movie and they adapted it into the TV show, but it's not there at all. And I think it was just brilliant from a pure entertainment point of view. But it could have worked in the movie very well as well with Harrison Ford. I think Harrison Ford takes the complete backseat to Raul Julia, and in the court scenes he's sacked back to the Raul Julia show, and he's just sitting there in the courtroom, and it's very, very meh. Whereas in Presumed Innocent, the TV show, we get, well, his lawyer, who's played by Brian Dennehy in the movie. Can't remember who plays the character in the TV show, but the chubby guy who has a heart attack that prompts Jake Gyllenhaal to represent himself is pure fucking cinema. It's a shame that it doesn't happen in the movie, but I could imagine Harrison Ford getting that righteous crankiness on and representing himself. By God damn it, I'm gonna prove my own innocence. And the fact that that's missing from it would have been very nicely used in the movie. So the motivations for the affair, I think, is better in the TV show. The decision to represent yourself in a courtroom, which is farcical as it is, I'm fucking there for, is way better in the TV show. The interpersonal relationships, the Tommy Malto character played by Sarsgaard is brilliant. Like you said, I don't think he's ever been better. He's just that. I love these unlikable characters that don't have the charisma as the lead, that are really just unlikable, that are very creepy, that are very just the opposite to our main character, like Pete in Mad Men to Don's Mad Men, these guys who are just lacking in all these things. And the dialogue and the back and forth between Tommy Malto and Jake Gyllenhaal and all that sparring and all that tension created from the courtroom in the TV show, I'm completely engrossed in that, whereas it just falls completely flat in the movie to me. And I like Harrison Ford. I thought he was oddly subdued in this. One thing I did like from the movie was the character of Caroline. Obviously, they had to really remove some of those things in 2024, but she's basically sleeps her way to the top. She fucks Harrison Ford. She fucks the Brian Dennehy character. Does she fuck the judge? I'm pretty sure. Whereas in the TV show, obviously she's a hard-hitting, unlikable woman, but she's not sleeping her way to the top. And in terms of the flashbacks, I really didn't like them in the TV show either. The way it constantly goes back to the sex scenes, and it just constantly intercuts with them. Oh, they're painting a house, and are they painting the inside of a room in one scene? But these little snippets, I hate that trope. I thought the sporadic flashbacks in the movie were better. Yeah, not much that I really liked about the movie. Again, that could be completely checkered by having watched the TV show first. And like you mentioned, the ending with the wife in the movie, obviously it's way better that the wife actually did the murder. And when I just saw one kid in the movie, I was thinking, okay, good, we're not going to get the daughter in this. I just think the wife doesn't really have it as an actress. And when she's delivered her lines at the end, I don't know what vibe she's going for. Is she going for Hitchcockian bad guy? Is she going for she's lost her mind? Just everything she's doing in that scene is fucking weird. And as much as I hated the twist in the TV show, it works better in the TV show. And that's because of a few things. Number one, when the daughter says she did it, it's such a bad moment. But Ruth Negga, who's really good actress in general, she was in Raw, Love Hate, Passing, and that movie with Joel Edgerton where they couldn't get married. I think she's in that as well. Very good actress. She just sells the horror of that so well, where she recoils and she's in horror. So even though the twist is really bad, her reaction to it is really good. And also thematically in the TV show, the twist works very well too, even though I fucking hated it, in the sense that Ruth Negga is trying to keep the family together. She's forgiven Jake Gyllenhaal's absolute shitty behavior, and he keeps fucking up the family. And the mother's doing everything she can to keep the family together. And then when the daughter goes to, is it Caroline's house? Is that her name? When she goes to, let's just call her Caroline. I can't really remember what the character's called. When she goes and she sees that, I think she says she's pregnant and she's going to keep it. She knows that will wreck their family. So then she murders her. And it's almost like Jake Gyllenhaal's reaction wrecked his family, and Ruth Negga's trying to keep her family together and family at all cost, psychologically molded the daughter into trying to preserve family. Now, again, I hate the twist, but at least it worked thematically. What we get in the final scene of the movie is the wife not nailing that scene, saying she left clues around so he would see, and it's quite a monologue. And then Harrison Ford's reaction is fine, but it's not as good as Ruth Negga's. So it falls flat. Now, to try and get into the headspace of, if I didn't see the movie or the TV show before the movie, maybe I'd be a lot more interested in where the case goes, and maybe I'd be a bit more interested in the conspiracy. And, oh, the judge is in on it. Oh, this happened. Oh, wow, it's a bit corrupt. And then being totally shocked at the end that the wife did it. Maybe there would have been a lot more mileage in that kind of viewing. Possibly so. Possibly so. But as it stands, much prefer the true crime, pulpy, trashy, amazingly acted TV show than the mostly logical, pretty boring TV show. The mostly logical, straightforward, or whatever I said, movie, I meant, not TV show.
Hey man, Saturday morning now, bank holiday weekend. Just throwing together some sandwiches, got the daughter in the other room watching Lilo and Stitch. Wife and baby upstairs in bed, so just catching a little breather. Very much disagree with your, well, disagree is the wrong word, because at the end of the day, it's come down to you've been entertained, I haven't been entertained. I think like the actual points that you raise, I mostly agree with. They just don't do it for me like they do it for you. The things that you felt strengthened the TV show, and then the things that I felt strengthened the movie don't seem to have like worked their charms on you as much. Like you said, it's difficult to judge these things when you're watching it, when it's like the second version that you're watching. Like I can imagine if they made some like cheap remake of The Godfather and you watch that first, then The Godfather watched immediately after that probably wouldn't have exactly the same potency. But just to hit on some of the points that you've raised, the cliffhanger stuff, I hate that. I mean, like, I think there are a few shows out there that have cliffhangers that aren't gimmicks. A few shows in history where you see a cliffhanger and it's not meaningless fluff that's going to get like completely dissolved and done away with in the first 5 minutes of the next episode. But those are incredibly rare. So for the most part, when I see a cliffhanger, I'm just like, why are you wasting my time with this bullshit? I know that this is just a red herring. It's not going to go anywhere. Like the ending twist of the final episode of the daughter doing it. It's just, hey, what if we did this? Well, that would shock people. And then they'd watch the next episode. So for the most part, watching the TV show, I felt that we were really being dragged around all over the place into not particularly interesting directions. Now, I agree with everything that you said about the acting of the TV show. I think the acting is fantastic. I think the dialogue can be very strong. And I also agree that the relationship in the TV show between Jake and Caroline, and specifically the way the relationship is dissected and reported on by Jake in the present day, is fascinating. And it's this kind of thing of like, he's obviously supposed to be this sort of jock character, like this like winner, strong, young guy. Like I presume that Harrison and Jake were about the same age when they made these projects, but Jake Gyllenhaal looks like he's like 28, Harrison looks like he's 60, because that's just the way people dressed and the difference between the two eras. But it's like taking the Jake Gyllenhaal character in this feels sort of like he's the quarterback. He's never been like cucked. He's never been not getting what he wants out of anything, career, women. And he's obviously fallen victim to the charms of this very manipulative, very hypnotic woman, as so many others have. And ultimately, it's completely broken him and turned him into this like obsessed, crumpled mess. That is really interesting to see. I think Jake does a fantastic job with that. And that there's a lot more interesting material there than there is in the movie. The movie isn't a 8-hour or 6-hour drama like the movie is, like a lean little legal thriller. So I just think there's no way that the movie could have competed on those grounds. But if you're going to go, look, this is a book / movie, let's make it into a mini series. What do we want to explore in greater detail? That's one of the areas that I'd tip my hat at the TV show. It does a fantastic job in that regard. But the plotting, I think, is just vastly superior in the movie. Like, to the point of, I would say that the movie has a good plot, the TV show has a bad plot. And these like hollow cliffhanger moments or hollow red herrings that are explored along the way, sometimes with good acting and good dialogue, are just irritating to me. So again, like I think we both said ad nauseum, if we had watched the movie first, it would have been a very different experience. And I kind of wish I had done that. But even still, going to the movie now, over time, it drew me in because I was just watching such a superior product from a plot standpoint. The acting in the movie also happens to be brilliant. It's just not as good as Jake and P Series performances in the TV show, which are a cut above anything in the rest of the TV show or the movie. I like Ruth Negga as well, but I think the character is she's not given that much to work with. So it's not her fault. It's just that Peter and Jake are given fantastic characters with loads of material to work with, and Ruth does what she can with it. As does, I always forget his name, but the guy that Jake's best friend who represents him. Speaking of which, I wouldn't say I knew, but I presumed innocent right from the very beginning that Jake was going to represent himself, because to me it's a bit tedious how much we've leaned into this hero, like alpha male type of character being the only thing that you can have in movies. Like when they made the movie Presumed Innocent, and I presume when the book was written, it wasn't necessary that the main character be ripped, right? It almost feels antithetical to the character, you could argue. When I start this movie, I'm like, or start the modern day TV show, it's like, he's the main character in something. He has to be ripped. He has to look like a Hollywood superstar. And by extension, he'll have to represent himself. There's no way that they can make it now that like a lawyer saves him or something, or just the wheels of legal proceedings save him. He'll have to be the superstar of the whole thing. So I very much assumed that he was going to go on to represent himself. I think we get some great material out of that. Like the closing statements, both from Peter and Jake, are phenomenal in the TV show. But I have absolutely no problem with the incredible Raul Julia being a character in the movie Presumed Innocent that has a major part to play in all this. Like, I like the wrinkle that they are rivals. Of course, it would have been nice to have seen like maybe like an opening scene of them going head to head. I think that's what you see in Philadelphia with Denzel and Tom Hanks. I think the movie starts with their rivalry, and then ultimately one has to represent the other. But yeah, I think keeping it a bit more grounded, and let's draw attention to the fact that the movie is not it's not like a documentary or something. The movie is still pretty outlandish, but
by contrast, it's more grounded in terms of what happened. There's not like heart attacks happening in the courtroom and people jumping in and doing this, and like the fireworks aren't there as much. But what the TV show does best, the movie is lacking, and what the movie does best, the TV show is lacking for me. And you can take that down to very micro things, like the character Kumagai, I believe his name is. In the book, I would imagine, I haven't read the book, but I'm imagining that he's quite an acerbic character, because we get him in the movie, you go, read the fucking file. Like he's got that element to him. They don't just like randomly throw that in for no reason. But that's not really explored in the movie as in terms of like there being an existing antagonistic relationship between Harrison Ford and that actor. Now, I don't know if it's in the book. I suspect that it is, but it's certainly in the TV show, and the actor that they get for the Kumagai part in the TV show works really well. So there's opportunities there to explore character in greater detail that are just done very well in the TV show. But it's the plot, the mechanics of the plot, the way that plays out, the what it's focused on, because as we've seen, it greatly differs from the book and the movie, and how it gets there and what it does. Like it's an inferior product to me on those grounds, and I think that it's impossible to know this, but I think if I'd watched the movie first and then watched the TV show, I would feel very strongly that the TV show was the movie was the better of the two. Of course, my experience with the movie was eaten into by, at least at the beginning of the movie, sort of being like, oh, right, okay, I guess we have to sit through the whole thing again. But then once I realized that it was like on all fronts doing something different, I liked it a lot more. It isn't a great movie though. It's as you said, it's a bit dull. It's not sexy, which the TV show is obviously trying to be sexy and, I guess succeeding in being sexy. And the movie is maybe trying to be sexy because, again, like a lot of the films we're watching, it was released in that late 80s, early 90s era of the erotic thriller. And I think, there was a, I don't know why, maybe it's something to do with the AIDS epidemic or something, but there was a fascination between the idea that sex, like, and kind of sinful sex, was a dangerous thing to be playing with. And, there's so many films that someone just comes under this lustful spell of a bad force or something that's dangerous or mysterious, and thus the plot of the film comes from that. But I don't think that, sometimes it feels like, okay, that is the whole mission statement, like Basic Instinct. But in the case of this, it feels a bit more like the movie itself isn't really lusting after the relationship. In the TV show, it is. The movie is just sort of displaying it. So it's a more subdued film than probably a lot of other directors would have made it back then. You're right in saying that, like, the accusation has no impact in this. There's one scene where they talk about how they might have to remortgage or sell the house to afford a fancy lawyer, but in the TV show, it completely rips his life apart. It's a comparison. I don't know really which I prefer. I hate. This isn't a logical piece of criticism, really, but like I personally just find it really tedious and boring. Watching the plot of someone's life being ripped apart, whether it's by accusations or whatever it might be. I'm not saying that there's no place for that in cinema or TV. It can, maybe often it's the appropriate thing to do, but I personally just find it really, really tedious because to me, it feels like, okay, I know that would happen in this context, the way that you've set up the parameters. And I understand from seeing it a million times in other things, what shape that would take. So I don't really want to see like hours and hours of it happening. And like, I don't really want to see like your kid's baseball game where the other parents are not friends with you anymore and all these little things. Like I'm not in any way disagreeing that it's valid to the story and to the character and to the scenario. I just find it really boring, and that's just kind of like a personal taste thing. So the fact that this movie doesn't go there, to me, is a plus, especially within a 2-hour runtime. I also don't think that it would necessarily happen. The TV show and the movie, to an extent, they make these people out to be like massive celebrities, kind of. I don't know that the TV show set in Chicago. I'm not sure if the movie set in Chicago couldn't really work out, but I don't really know that like a deputy prosecutor being accused of something would be quite as high profile as the TV show makes out to be, where it's like just non-stop on the news and everything like that. But yeah, I mean, who knows? I mean, it's difficult to, obviously I've never been through what I presume is a pretty hellish experience of being accused of murder. And so I don't know how destructive it is on your life. And it may be the case that it's so destructive that you could literally just make that the entire movie, and that's fine. But I personally just find it boring. So it was something that I was happy to see kind of omitted here, by contrast to the TV show. But yeah, we've come away with very different experiences. One little thing that popped into my head after sending that voice note yesterday was that deviation that we get, that flashback to the child abuse trial. I thought that was really good. For starters, just as a little anecdote, the kid, who is like absolutely fucking heartbreaking in that scene. The kid is the boy from Jurassic Park. So nice to see him a little bit younger, kind of popping up, maybe one of his breakthrough roles or something that Spielberg might have seen and earmarked him. But also I like the tone and the texture of that it's different to the rest of the movie. Like when we get the flashbacks to Gyllenhaal, it's less showing the plot and less showing it's not showing the plot of the murder. It's just showing sexiness and obsession, right? That's what we're getting. With this, we get those things, but we also get like, okay, this is a break away from the energy of the murder trial, and we're going to show a little bit of, I don't know, like that whole sequence with that trial and that investigation there is a moment, that moment of her talking to the kid in the little sort of kindergarten room is in the TV show, and it's a nice moment in the TV show, but it's like 2 seconds in the TV show. Ironically, it's that tone is dragged out a bit more in the movie. So yeah, it's hang on, I've got to get my daughter some water. Yeah, it's I think the flashbacks work a lot better, and I think that they have a very clear mission statement. Like every flashback is like beginning, middle, end, knows what it's trying to tell you, knows what it's trying to deliver, takes you on a little mini story, and it's not just like, you know, Memento style, just like flashes that are just supposed to be impressionistic. So for me, they have a much higher impact, even though they're lacking in some of the kind of interesting, intriguing, what was the nature of the relationship thing. Like in this one, it's like everything in the movie, other than arguably the ending monologue from the wife, is very clear about like what was people's intentions, what happened, what were people trying to get out of it. Oh, also, after I watched the movie, I went on Wikipedia, and just like nonchalantly at the end of the cast section, it says, or the casting section, it says, this is the screen debut of Jeffrey Wright. I was like, what? It's this Jeffrey Wright was in this movie? And then I was like, the only person I can think of that could be him was the male prostitute that they tracked down, and he kind of tells them about how he had bribed the judge to get out of some accusation. I was like, that can't be Jeffrey Wright. So I went back and watched it, and I was like, no, that is not Jeffrey Wright. And then I looked him up, and it was like, Jeffrey Wright plays prosecuting attorney or something like that. So like, okay, so is he like on the team of Tommy Molto, like some like paralegal or something? But did a little bit of clicking around, couldn't see him. Went back to the scene where that scene of the Jurassic Park boy, because I thought he might have been one of the people like on the team of that boy's mother, but again, couldn't spot him. So if you have any idea where Jeffrey Wright is in this movie, let me know. And yeah, I guess there's not that much else to say about it. I'm kind of glad to have gone through this experience. I'm tempted to go further, tempted to go to Bill Pullman's Innocent, the sequel's Presumed Innocent. Also, while we're tangenting away, Bill Pullman, we've recently watched some movies by John Dahl, particularly like 90s cult neo-noir filmmaker. He went to film school in like, it wasn't LA or something, it was like Ohio or something like that, Montana, I think. And his teacher in film school was Bill Pullman. So Pullman, this is literally nothing to do with Presumed Innocent, so it's just a complete tidbit at the end here, but Bill Pullman was a professor, like a, deep, good career. Like he was completely set in his career, and then was like, I'm going to go be an actor. And then he's in fucking Independence Day and Lost Highway and stuff like that. So, yeah, not only did he transition from one successful career to another, but in the first successful career, he taught, probably amongst others, John Dahl. And one would think he probably, helped that guy's career actually happen. I think he pops up in a John Dahl movie as well at some point. So anyway, take from that what you will. Hopefully that reframes everything you think about Presumed Innocent. Yeah. Are you intrigued by more of Rusty's adventures, or are you satisfied?
So I just sent you the screenshot of Jeffrey Wright in the background on a phone in Presumed Innocent, the movie. I love the way when you see he's cast and you're thinking, right, I only saw one black guy in that movie. That can't be him. But you went to look anyway, whereas actually it's just somebody in the background. That's funny. Yeah, and regarding Bill Pullman, apparently it was a number of his students that said, you should really do acting. Could you imagine if you have this teacher that's such a good actor that you're just in awe every time that you go there to class, that this guy really should be something? All I had in film school was a guy who was in a KFC advert and absolutely despised Tim Roth. And then it turned out Tim Roth beat him to a role once. And then he just internalized it ever since, that his whole career was ruined because Tim Roth took this role, and he just used his class as a chance to badmouth him at every turn. The people you'll find in life. Yeah, so I agree that the twists and everything don't mean anything, really. And you brought up an interesting point, actually. If I had watched the movie first, the TV show would probably have grated on me. But I mentioned Lost, and I mentioned it again. It's not so much the answers that I get from said bullshit twist. It's the level of speculation and gossip that I have from each revelation that I get the mileage from. So I agree that I didn't think most of it was going to go anywhere. But at the same time, the best way I can describe this is the Johnny Depp Amber Heard trial effect. I remember when that was on, me and my partner, first of all, we watched a bit of it because we were so curious that celebrities would broadcast the trial. And then it was just so engrossing with its absolute bullshit. And the way lawyers bring in plot points, if you will, that go nowhere, just to just to complicate the overall case and smokescreen it. And oh, but what about this? What about this time? And it's just going further and further away from the case, but just from a pure car crash gossip fest. It's just entertaining. How are they going to use this in the trial? How are they going to use this to complicate the narrative? Well, the plot beats of the TV show are very much like the plot beats of a courtroom, both in and out of the courtroom. And maybe that's why true crime is so engrossing, because how it works, even in its narrative and its characters and leading down this strand and leading down another strand, it's exactly how lawyers complicate and convolute and just completely introduce bullshit into the proceedings. And by the end of the Johnny Depp Amber Heard trial, but by about week 4, me and my partner were looking forward to it every Friday, thinking, is it bad if we get popcorn for this? And when you're watching something like Presumed Innocence, the TV show, with somebody, and you're just having a running commentary to this bullshit. Oh no, it couldn't have been the kid. Nah, that's ridiculous. But who had access to the knowledge of the case? And so it couldn't be. And then they throw in something ridiculous like, oh, but he would have been aware of the case because he's got his mother's files. And then you're thinking, ooh, okay, well that is still bullshit, but they managed to put in something that make me doubt that. That is how a lawyer affects your head as a jury in these shows. Sorry, in real life. So when you're watching these shows, you are the jury, and it's almost like you get access to the before and after and a visualization of things you would normally have to visualize yourself if you're sitting there in the courtroom. So that's why I think those things work really well. And yeah, I agree what you're saying to a point as well, that you thought, oh, he's definitely going to end up representing himself. So that was no shock to you. But for me, it's not so much that he represents himself. It's how that feeds into the tightrope courtroom. Oh, you better be careful. You better be careful what you say here, buddy. You better be careful that you don't go too hard on the son. Oh, he's fucking grilling the son. And then just the psychological chess game that these courtroom dramas do when they do best. I'm there for that. So it's not so much the fact that he represented himself. That was like, it's like, oh, now you have to walk the tightrope with the jury, walk tightrope with us, and now you're also going to be a witness. I mean, it's totally ludicrous. But just how that works into the psychology of the courtroom scenes, it just works very well. And yeah, it doesn't hold up on any real level, but like I said, there's an entertainment factor and there's not. So if I strip this apart from a pure analytical point of view, I'm like, well, that was bullshit. That was dropped in for no reason. Blah, blah, blah. It doesn't stand up to much, but it doesn't matter because I was entertained. It's like you're like Ethan Hawke in Training Day and I'm Denzel Washington reading my bullshit newspaper on this. And you're from the point of view of, well, this is bullshit, right? You know, uh, those stories aren't true and everything like that, don't you? And I'm like putting that, and then I'm putting down the paper and I'm looking at Presumed Innocent, the movie. Are you going to entertain me? Are you going to entertain me? Well, no. Well, then let me watch this bullshit and be entertained. That's where we are on this, which is quite funny. And you ask me, am I here for more Rusty Savage adventure? I am not. And in fact, looking at Innocence and the spin-offs that came afterwards, apparently it's more the side characters, like the Raul Julia character, the Brian Dennehy character. Incidentally, Brian Dennehy plays another character in a sequel or directed DVD or TV movie. So I'm not particularly here for any more. However, we are going to get a season 2 of Presumed Innocence, the Apple TV show, which is not really interested in, but who knows? Who knows? Sarsgaard said he's not going to come back, so maybe season 2 will open up with his murder or something like that. So I'm here for anything Jake Gyllenhaal does, though. So I might watch it on that tip. The other thing that I'll say is, one thing that I liked about the TV show as well is that I did like the use of nightmares in terms of how they're ingesting all these murders and all these horrible images and all this details about the crime, and they're having horrible fucking nightmares and dreams about something. Like, did you ever have a stress dream that perfectly creates an almost Guillermo del Toro version of what your worries and anxieties are just before you go to sleep? I think the TV show did a very good job of inserting that type of stress to show that everybody's under, which is very hard to do. Thought they did very well with that as well. And yeah, you do raise an interesting question, though. Like I said, if I had watched the movie first, the TV show might have really grated on me, because I would have been watching a longer version of what I felt about the movie, having watched the TV show first. So if I had to watch 8 hours of something that I felt I already knew the answer to, I wouldn't have continued watching the TV show probably. And if I had watched the movie fresh without the twist, probably the twist at the end, even though it's handled pretty badly in the movie, would have ended the movie on enough of a high in terms of the twist itself, and that you just wouldn't expect it. And is it Greta Sachi? No, that's the Caroline character. I can't remember who played his wife, but like you said, Bruce Willis's wife in Die Hard. She's so dull and fades into every scene that she's even less of a suspect and even less in your mind than you would think. So the twist at the end, I might have felt it, obviously nowhere near on the same level, but it might have given me that primal fear kind of, oh, it was her. And even though her monologue is pretty bad, I think I would have ended the movie on a high. And if someone told me about it, I would probably downplay it and tell them they should watch it, but keep your expectations low. And it might end on enough of a high. And if I had watched it first, it might have ended on enough of a high that I might have had a little bit more time for it. But as it stands, pretty forgettable. And it didn't really get into it in the slightest and in the same level that you did.
Yeah, fair enough. I think, to be honest with you, I don't think, as I keep saying, I don't think it's a great movie. And I think the things that you disliked about the movie, I disliked about the movie. The things that you liked about the TV show, I liked about the TV show. I don't think we're actually that far apart in like the way that we would describe the pros and cons of the two works. I just think that the things that irritated me about the TV show were just less of a big deal to you. And I do think that you like TV a lot more than I do. And, you know, things that bother you about TV just make it TV almost unwatchable to me. Whereas to you, it's like, this shit. And to me, it's like, oh my God, why am I watching this? So that's a challenge. But there was a lot of really good stuff in the TV show. I'd forgotten about the nightmares. I think is it Bill Camp? Is that the name of the actor? I think it's him that kind of has them. There's one where his head explodes, and my mother, who is the absolute perfect audience member for like anything, any entertainment, she's like laughing out loud, jumping out of her chair, like everything. She like shrieked so loud, and it woke up my little baby boy. Yeah, it's good stuff. I think the dissection of the relationship, like Jake Gyllenhaal, the layers and layers of lies that he's been telling, all unraveling, and the amount of times he thinks that he can still perpetuate some sort of lie until that's revealed, and he has to come out with that. And just seeing that relationship, Ruth Negga having to reckon with that is really good, and it's not something we get in the movie, nor do we get Harrison Ford really being stressed or bothered by the situation. Not by contrast anyway. I think there's a lot of great material for Jake to work with. So yeah, there's for me, it's just a case of the TV show having too many annoying TV tropes to deal with, rather than it being a case of the TV show not having the goods up its sleeve, because it just blatantly does. It has so much quality in it. It's impeccably cast. I mean, we haven't even mentioned like the actor who plays De La Guardia and stuff like these minor characters, even if they're not good characters, like the barman, like they're still good actors. Now this, you've referenced Lost a few times, and you know it's one of my favorite shows of all time. I don't know if I could revisit it, kind of for these reasons that we're discussing, but the experience of watching Lost the first time is maybe the best relationship I've ever had to a TV show. And I agree that the strength of Lost is that they very much in the writing lent into this model of offer questions, not answers. But the thing about a mystery show is that the format of the mystery show almost demands that there not be satisfying answers, because if you do have satisfying answers and a satisfying conclusion, and you're able to like tie it up with a bow, then that's going to be incredibly predictable when it's spread out over a multi-season TV show. So the questions and the intrigue that you offer is going to be pretty dull and boring. Whereas if you don't have anything up your sleeve in terms of a satisfying conclusion, then you can go absolutely nuts on creating mystery and intrigue and suspense, and Lost does that with a plum. Now, in the case of Presumed Innocent, it's not a mystery show. It's a mystery show in terms of like a whodunit type thriller type suspense thing, but it's not a mystery show in that classic J.J. Abrams mold of we just don't know the nature of the world that we exist in. And for that, for me at least, for like a legal drama, I want like Primal Fear or like Witness for the Prosecution or any of these kind of classic courtroom dramas. I want a satisfying conclusion at the end. And you can give me some red herrings. I'm not a fan, but maybe you can do it well. Like I'm thinking about the scene in Zodiac where it's Jake Gyllenhaal, actually, I believe, who has to go down into the basement, the guy who makes posters and stuff. Like, you can send me down alleyways that ultimately don't lead anywhere, and it can be brilliant entertainment. But if the answers you have at the end of your show are complete bullshit, and everything along the way is complete bullshit in terms of it ultimately resulting in some sort of satisfying narrative experience, then that's difficult for me to get on board with, especially if I can sort of sense that that's what we're watching. Like, as I was watching that show, it wasn't just that I was enjoying it and I was ultimately disappointed, because I don't mind that. Like, I don't mind if the last few episodes of Game of Thrones suck, because that I had an amazing time watching 5 seasons of it. So it's more that as I'm watching it, I'm like, I don't buy this. I don't really think it's going anywhere. I think that this murder comes down to a much more local outcome rather than some old case and some guy that was maybe around tentatively linked. I just don't buy that this show is going to make that be the outcome of it. It's too remote from Jake. So as I'm watching it, I just feel like my time is being wasted. And I feel like the things that they're putting in at the ending of the episode are just supposed to be shocking for 2 minutes, and then like they're shocking until 2 minutes into the next episode, when it suddenly gets sort of explained away or whatever. It's kind of Days of Your Life type stuff, where it's like shocking revelation, and then as soon as the next episode starts, it's like, oh, actually that doesn't really mean anything. So yeah, that stuff bothered me. But you know, it works on people. I agree with everything that you've said about like the trading barbs, the jargon, the cross examinations, the treading the line of how you present yourself, and don't go after this on him, or don't take the bait on this. That is fantastic. Like, I have to make sure that I'm paying this show all of the compliments it deserves, because the legal discourse and the in courtroom strategizing when it comes to cross-examination is brilliant. I mean, it's as good as it gets almost, but it just feels like we're it's not got any kind of substance underneath it a lot of the time. I wasn't intrigued by the guy who visited a prostitute years ago. That didn't intrigue me. I wasn't intrigued by Jake's children cycling by the house and all that stuff. I wasn't intrigued by Carolyn's ex-husband and her son. It just didn't really give me enough there for me to go, I want to go down that. And I get what you're saying about, like, it's quite a smart observation that the show is sort of trying to sow reasonable doubt in your mind, and it's operating very similar to how a defense attorney would operate, by giving you a sort of smorgasbord of different, like, tenuous, flimsy things, but creating enough of a picture that maybe Jay didn't do it. But I could sort of flip the training day thing back on you. It's like, this isn't entertaining me, you know? It's like, yes, okay, I'm not trying to stand in your way of being entertained by it, but for me, I came to this show, well, I came to the show because my mother was visiting, and I thought this, she loves Jake Gyllenhaal. I mean, who doesn't? And this is going to be like a mini series, although now it's not a mini series. It's going to be easy entertainment, and it got us through the week, got us through, you know, the few nights that we watched it over. You watched it in 24 hours, but we watched it fairly quick ourselves, probably 2 episodes a night kind of thing. So 4 nights spread across, and it does the trick. It does the job. It just felt like there's shit TV, right? I mean, we've drifted off this movie completely at this point, but there's shit TV, which accounts for 99% of TV shows. Then there's like top tier TV, talking The Wire, Mad Men, Better Call Saul, stuff like that. And then there's a lot of shows. Apple makes them, HBO makes them. Like The Night Of is another courtroom drama that I would say fits this, where they figured out the kind of the surface quality of top tier TV, that how to cast it, how to shoot it, some of the dialogue flourishes, like just some of the stylistic editing choices and stuff like that, and they're able to kind of present to you something that on first glance, like in a trailer or opening scene or whatever, gives you that hope that maybe you're watching top tier television, but actually has nothing under the surface, nothing substantial, is as all over the place and complete bullshit in the end as trash TV. We watched Sharp Objects there last year, I think, and it's exactly the same scenario of like, this is rock bottom, like bullshit, terrible television with good acting, good music, good cinematography, good editing, good concept, all of these kind of easier things to put in on top of it, masking the fact that it's bullshit. But really what makes something not bullshit is that it's got to have like a solid core and a meaningful core that no matter how deeply you burrow into the show, you're getting nourished and you're getting something of quality. So I should sort of bracket that now, because I think we're getting too focused on the TV show. The movie, it is, for me, doesn't reach the heights of the TV show in terms of like great dialogue, interesting dissection of a marriage and things like that. There's the many ways in which the TV show is able to like play with more high impact material and delivery. And, you know, got Sarsgaard, who I keep coming back to, is like, you know, we don't get anything as good as Sarsgaard's performance in the movie, but the movie is clean of bullshit. Like, the movie is 2 hours lean. I know you didn't have a great time with it and you felt it was a bit boring and dull and stuff like that. And I get that. And again, it's not a masterpiece, but like, I think if you watch this movie on its own without having seen the TV show, which I haven't done, but like I'm assuming here, there's not really much wrong with this movie except for the ending, except for that final confession. But it ticks along at a nice little pace. Every avenue explored isn't a red herring. It's a step closer to the truth. Every scene is giving us more understanding of the characters and the world and the situation, and there's no fluff on it. And I think if I'm on the hunt for your sort of John Grisham legal drama movies out there, which I actually wouldn't mind going on that hunt because I think there's a lot of significant ones that I've missed, this movie to me is like, we often talk about second tier action movies, you know, like maybe Cliffhanger, maybe yeah, I don't know. There's a few movies out there that like, they're not Die Hard, they're not Terminator 2, they're not in that upper echelon of like the absolute best of the best. But there are, if you want to watch an action movie, if you want to go check out an old classic action movie, you can have zero complaints about that. And to me, this movie delivers on that level. It is a shame that it doesn't have a satisfying ending, and I've now seen that ending play out twice, different interpretations of it, but both a similar twist in the sense of like, it turns out Rusty didn't do it, but someone in his house did it, right? And I presume the book has the movie ending, but it doesn't work at all in the movie, and it doesn't work at all in the TV show. Yet the book, coming out of nowhere, debut novel, became like one of the most sought after books around in terms of the film rights, and it was an absolute smash hit blockbuster seller. I do see the appeal, even if it's written badly, of it turns out it was his wife. Like, that's a good idea. That's a good concept for one of these kind of movies, but it's so badly done in both cases. I would say, as terrible as it is in the TV show, it might even be worse in the movie even though her doing it is plausible, like the kid doing it is in no way plausible. The woman doing it is plausible, but the actual execution of it and what she's done and what she's trying to achieve through that is so ludicrous that it basically tops the TV show in terms of how ludicrous that is. So I'd be interested to see a third swing taken, and of course the original first swing at the this ending. Maybe read that chapter of the book or something. It's probably only a few pages, that bit to read, just to see, is there a version of this possible that works? I mean, I suppose if you're going to go down the route with the wife did it, the best version would just be like, well, she went over in the fit, she's, mascara running down her cheeks, driving over in the rain, knocked on the door, the woman opens the door, she rushes in, kills the woman, and then she starts freaking out and realizing that she's going to get caught, so she stages it to look like a sex crime. And there's none of this like crazy forethought, Rube Goldberg, like trying to do this and achieve this, and like that would be the best version of it. So maybe that's what you get in the book. But that's still inferior to it turning out Rusty did, I think, which should be the much more satisfying ending, especially with these actors like Harrison Ford and Jake Gyllenhaal. Like, to turn out that they managed to have the Hollywood charisma to pull off getting found innocent, but they are actually guilty. Like that would be poetic and superior in my opinion. I did notice that there is a sequel or like a second season of it coming. It's funny, like the amount of miniseries that happens to, like Stranger Things, I think famously was a standalone miniseries that was just too successful to stop at one. But I wonder if the second season will be an adaptation of the sequel book that, is it Scott Turow? I forget the name of the author, but will it be an adaptation of that book? Because that's what Innocent starring Bill Pullman is. And now I'm like, part of me wants to just be like done with this and never watch anything to do with Rusty again. Part of me wants to maybe check out season 2 of the Gyllenhaal show, because I'm sure it's better than the made-for-TV movie. And part of me wants to actually do a full deep dive and do the reverse of what I've done this time, which is watch Innocent at some point in the next year, and then watch season 2 of Presumed Innocent and just kind of compare those two. But yeah, I think of those three options, the one I'm most inclined to pick is just to call it here and go, I've had my fill of Rusty Savage, or whatever he's called. I think this is decent enough stuff. It's piqued my curiosity in a couple of directions. Not in getting more Rusty, but getting more legal dramas, more John Grisham, more of the films that this would be associated with. And then also, like I said, getting on my Alan J. Pakula tip, checking it out. I think the Parallax View is the one that looked the most attractive, but he is a very acclaimed director that I don't really have much of a sense for what he delivers. And on the strength of Presumed Innocent, there isn't really a specific directorial identity there. So it'd be interesting to see, like, if not this type of thing, then what was it that really made him such a acclaimed director? Oh yeah, one last thing that just came into my head there as I was just reflecting on the ending of the movie. We've talked about how clumsy that ending is in its monologue and in her just revealing her plan, her method, her reasons, and it's almost like, Jesus, shut the fuck up! You're ruining this movie. Like, it's been pretty tight up until that point, and you're just chipping away at any logic that this film has. But that bit where she comes down the stairs and she goes, I fooled them all. What did she say? That she says, no one believed I could do it. I fooled them all, or something like that. And she's obviously talking about her job interview. And then it turns out like she really did do it. But that's such a cool moment, and it's cheesy as hell, and it is so camp, and it's just ridiculous. But it reminded me of The Stepfather bit in The Stepfather where he goes, wait, who am I here? And it's like, you can just see the writers have come up with this amazing line that it's like, it doesn't matter if they would say that. It doesn't matter if that's too perfect or it's too on the nose or it's just like crowbarred in. I'm like, the line is good enough that you get that shit in the fucking movie. So that was a good moment. And yeah, it was a one positive from that scene. How did she not fucking clean that thing as well? Like, just fucking leaving it back in his toolbox. Or was it because I guess her whole thing is that she wanted him to know it was her. So yeah, I guess on that level, it kind of makes sense that she didn't clean it. It was like he was supposed to interpret that from her weird tapestry of like glass that had his fingerprint on, but that, yeah, it just, the whole thing was completely ridiculous.
I love the way in your praise for the "I fooled them all" line. You started off in praise of it, and then just remembered the after point and just switch your cadence. It was completely ridiculous. I think good lines are very much like Tom Cruise stunts. If you could find a way to work everything around it, no matter how convoluted and unnecessary everything else is, we'll forgive it if the stunt is good enough. So yeah, you gotta get in your good lines. But yeah, I will not be watching any of the spin-off of the 90s movies. Well, they're not technically spin-off. I won't be watching anything come after that. Probably will watch season 2 of the TV show. I very much left it thinking I've seen enough. But if they start something completely new, case-wise and anything like that, then I'm sure I'll get sucked in again.
Your mailbox is full. Please delete new or stored messages which you no longer need so that new messages may be received.